Hi, this is Tracy Bevington. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and the owner of a group therapy practice called Pacific Marriage and Family Therapy Network. For today's Facebook Live, I'm going to be talking about parenting teenagers. So this one is called Help, I'm Parenting a Teenager. Before we get started, I just want to remind you of a few things. If you are joining us and would like to leave a comment, or please let us know if this is your first time and where you're joining us from, please do so in the comment section. If you'd like to be in contact with us or join our newsletter, you'll see a link at the top of the page. Please follow us, join us. We appreciate all of your support. Alrighty. Also, almost forgot. If you are joining us, please do check your sound. Make sure that your sound is turned on or turned up or your volume is turned up. Sometimes the default is for mute or really low. Alrighty, so help. I'm parenting a teenager. Parenting is really tough. It's probably the hardest job any of us will ever have. There are a lot of reasons for that. Some of the reasons are simple. It's not like when you decide to have a baby, they hand over like a book with full instructions on how to be the best parent to your particular child. There's no instructions, there are no handbooks. They don't even have like classes or training, really. Like when you go to when you have to drive a car, you have to take a test. You have to prove that you can drive that car, that you know all of the laws and the regulations, and that you can be the best driver possible. But when you leave the hospital, they just kind of say, goodbye, good luck. I totally remember leaving the hospital with my firstborn, and my husband and I kind of got into the elevator to go downstairs, and we kind of looked at each other and said, oh my God, I can't believe they're letting us leave with this baby, because we like had no idea what we were doing, really. So it's really, it's like learn as you go, which makes parenting especially difficult. The number one way that we learn things is through modeling. So guess what? Where did you learn how to be a parent? From your parents. And where did they learn how to be a parent? From their parents, and so on and so on and so on. So it's not that anyone is necessarily like kind of born or whatever, a bad parent or a parent that doesn't really know enough tricks or have enough skills to manage their teenager or their child. It's just that their parents didn't learn and their parents before them didn't teach them. So what we're trying to do now is take all of the information that you got from your experience as a child having a parent, and we're going to try to take some of the good things out of that, and we're also going to try to make choices so that we don't follow the things that we didn't like so much about how our parents were parenting us. So our own experience is the foundation from which we come from. That's the base of how we make our choices, how we're going to parent, how we react. Reactions come from the part of our brain that is not necessarily reasonable and rational. It's all this like limbic system. It's not coming from the prefrontal cortex. This is where all of our like executive functioning is. This is where we are reasonable and rational, not back here. So when we are reacting to things in a way based on our kind of foundational knowledge, it's usually a reaction that is not well thought out and sometimes can actually be pretty inappropriate. So everyone knows kind of what they want to do or what they should do. The hard part is actually figuring out how to do it. It's kind of like when I don't know, you're in a group or you're at work or I don't know, somewhere. And then all of a sudden somebody says, all right, dance. And you're like, what? Like, I don't know what you mean. I mean, I guess I could dance, but are you talking about like hip hop? Are you talking about like slow dancing? Are you talking about like, I don't know what you're talking about. So it's like that when we talk about parenting. People are like, oh, you just parent, just be in charge of that little person's life. It's like, well, I kind of know what I'm doing, but not really. So the number one thing as a parent is to kind of cut yourself some slack. Like, be kind to yourself, especially if your parenting experience as a child had some or a lot of opportunities for improvement, because that's what you're going off of as you're parenting your own children, your own experience. So if we want things to change, when we want things to change, a big part of it is being mindful. You need to think about what you want to do and what is best. So if you are creating choices for yourself, then you can really see the several different avenues that you have when you're presented with a situation. When we're presented with a situation and we're not thinking about the choices, we go wham right to the one that's coming from here that is usually not the best one. So if you are deciding, or let's say you're in a situation where your child is doing something dangerous, like, I don't know, I'll use a little kid example because it's clear. Let's say your child runs out in the middle of the street, even if it's not like a busy street, but they just like run out into the middle of the street. They're not like looking both ways, they're not checking for cars, they just walk out there. You have to decide if that's something that is really bad or if something that's kind of bad. Where does it go in this like kind of spectrum of bad? From there, you can decide how you're going to react to it. When we are going from just being reactionary, no matter where it is on the spectrum, we're coming at it hard and we're coming at it big. And when that happens, your kids are not going to listen. I actually have to remind my own husband of this a lot. So my number one tip for today is deciding when to use your big voice. The big voice is the one that you use when your kid's like running into the street without looking and you're like, oh my God, that's super dangerous, you could die. That seems like an appropriate time to use the big voice that is like, what are you doing? Oh my gosh, so scared. What are you doing? Never do that again. Because he could have or she could have died. That's like a pretty major thing. Now, if your kid is, I don't know, forgetting to brush their teeth, I'm not sure if that is a situation where you would want to go for the big voice. Of course, you're going to be disappointed and you're going to want to bring it to their attention. But do you need to use the big voice? I don't know. You have to decide. For me, that's not a big voice thing. But again, it depends on what you decide as a parent is really important or kind of not important. And you need to decide and choose. Because if you're going to pick everything and react the same way, it's kind of like I talk about parenting and disciplining like this as like bringing down the hammer. Okay? If you're going to bring down the hammer every single time, every time you're just going wham, wham, like, don't do that, that's bad. Da, 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 da. Eventually, the nail is actually inside of the wall or it's in the wood, and you're still bringing down the hammer. What's happening? Nothing, right? Because you bring down the hammer too much, and nothing else happens. It's already in the wood. So you're just like wasting energy. So choose what you want to bring the hammer down on and be as mindful as you can. Being mindful means being present and taking each situation as it comes, evaluate it, and then decide at that time, is this a bring down the hammer, or is this more of like a have a stern conversation? Kids listen when you mean business. What does it mean to mean business? Sometimes people think that means you have to be loud. Not really. When you mean business, it means you're stern. It means you're firm. It means that you look at your child in the eye, or your teenager, which could be like up here, by the way. So you're going to look at your child in the eye and you're going to say, I'm really disappointed. I found this or that, or I noticed this. And that's not okay. So what are we going to do about this? And you let them squirm and you let them give you a bunch of excuses and you listen and you still say, it's just not okay. What are we going to do about it? And they're going to give you more excuses. You're like, well, it's just not okay. So what are we going to do about it? Until your teenager says, well, I guess I could, I don't know, let's say they got a bad grade or something. I guess I could study more. I'm like, oh, I think that would be a great idea. So what does that mean to study more? Do you see how we're asking them? We're moving them toward an answer that we want, but we're not giving it to them. We're going to talk a lot more about that next week, by the way. But kids will listen when you have to engage their brain to think about solving the problem. They're not going to listen if you're just talking at them. So if you use the big voice, that's just talking at them. It's usually using the big voice is to like get their attention. It's like, whoa, oh. But then after that, if you continue with the big voice, you're really kind of wasting your time because that's just hammering in something that's already been nailed in fully. So in closing, I just like to say again that parenting is hard. It takes a lot of practice. And although I'm saying, decide when you want to use your big voice, sounds kind of easy, but I know from my personal experience that it's actually not that easy, especially when we're upset, because our brain wants to go back here. It wants to just react in the way that we've always done. So try your best to calm your nervous system, to calm your brain and your body so that you can access the smarter part of your brain and decide how you want to parent in that situation, by using the big voice or by using a firm and not softer, but a firm voice. All right, thank you for joining us for this week's Facebook Live, where we talked about Help, I'm Parenting a Teenager, Part 1, which is deciding when to use your big voice. Please join us next Thursday at 1 o'clock Pacific, where we'll be talking about tip number 2, which, as I mentioned before, is how conversation gets you more than a lecture. Again, I'm Tracy Bevington. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and the owner of a group therapy practice in Manhattan Beach, Santa Monica, and Sherman Oaks called Pacific Marriage and Family Therapy Network. I really look forward to having you join us again, and I hope to see you next week. Thank you.